Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. Before I begin on the stories, I just wanted to mention, if you have your own personal scary story that you would like to send me for me to possibly narrate here on the channel, you can do so by sending it to southerncannibal.com. So if you have a personal true scary story that you'd like to share, please consider sending it my way. Now that all that's out of the way, let's begin. I was 21 years old during this time, and I was in college, but I was looking for ways to fund my class expenses. I had asked around if there was any easy work that they could recommend for me. Luckily, my friend was working part-time in a pharmacy with an easy workload, so she recommended me to the boss, and I was scheduled for an interview. The pharmacy was right in the heart of the Filipino community in Toronto, around Bathurst and Wilson. It was a small pharmacy owned by an elderly man and his family. I went in and I wore a casual outfit, just an orange shirt and black jean skirt with flip-flops. When I went inside, the owner greeted me and he asked me to go to the office for the interview. Looking around, the pharmacy had also served as a mini convenience store, with the back end of the store serving as the pharmacy itself. My job was to handle the checkout for the convenience store, but also handle the medications if there's no one at the till. Needless to say, I got the job and I was scheduled to work the next week with my friend to train me for 2 days. The following week, I went in with my friend and she trained me while I followed her around the store. It was a good 2 days, and she said that I was good to be left alone already, and so that's what happened the next day. The next day was a Wednesday, and I went to work very bright. I was nervous because I would handle the till in the pharmacy side by myself without my friend this time, as well as the owner of the store. I arrived and checked in. Now, to check in, you have to go to the store office at the back of the store. I started to work, and everything was fine. I'm about 30 minutes in now. When things started to dwindle down, I noticed the owner looking at me, and he had then called me over. We started talking, and he asked me about my face, as I had acne at the time. He told me he had something he wanted to give me later. I just said okay and went back to the till because there was somebody there. After checking them out, I returned back to the office and he was there holding something. He gave me some cortisone cream and he explained what to do with it. I thanked him, but I then paused as it seemed he had something else that he wanted to say to me. He then asked me to lean down as he was a few inches shorter than me, and I did. He then suddenly grabbed me, seemingly for a hug, but then kissed me on the cheek. I was honestly shocked. My friend had told me that the owner was a friendly man, but I wasn't used to this level of friendliness. I mean, kissing on the cheek was normal, right? Well, at the time I thought it was, so I'm frozen and not knowing what to do. And I'm just standing there as he was pecking me on the cheek. When I felt it was too much, I started to pull back, but he wouldn't let me go. I was frozen. It was a miracle that someone then came in, because he then pushed me away. "Somebody's here," he said, as if I was the one who initiated this. I then went to the till, still shaken up a bit, the ointment clutched in my hand. I then looked around for a camera. There were 2 cameras, but unfortunately, all of them were pointed at the pharmacy, none towards the office. There was no way of getting evidence about what happened. I then kept on wondering if what just happened was real. Should I report it? Was it harassment? So I decided to get evidence. I tried calling my friend and keep her on the phone. She didn't answer, so I decided to try an audio recording, and I hid my phone in my pocket. Well, the owner called me to the back of the office yet again, and I was ready, just praying that my phone wouldn't stop recording, as I only had a little bit of phone memory at the time. I had stopped by the doorway of the office so that I was within the bounds of the store's camera. He got frustrated, and he pulled me in the office and resumed what he was doing. I waited for a few seconds to try and push away, but for some reason, I was just frozen. I knew this wasn't right. He then initiated to pull back, and he started caressing my cheek and chin. He went on saying that I was really beautiful and that he could give me gifts and medication for my acne. I just said nothing and I waited until I could return back to the till. I went back to the till, my safe zone, and I then checked my phone for the recording. Wouldn't you know, it stopped recording just a few seconds in. There wasn't enough memory on the phone, it said. Frustrated, I needed to record something, then go to the police. I mean, surely they'll help me out, right? I had another chance to record the afternoon within the bounds of the store camera. I had started asking him why he was giving me gifts, hoping he would then say something that was more than enough evidence. He played it safe, but there was a portion that said to ask him for anything, and he'd give it to me, and that can serve as my evidence. When I went back home later in the day, I checked my recording, but I was shocked to find that the audio wasn't clear. It was a garbled mess. I was lost. I didn't know what to do at this point. My friend called me back, asking why I called her. I explained what happened and she said it was weird, that never happened to her or any of the other coworkers. After the call, I was then thinking to myself, did my friend even believe me? Would the police believe me? I don't even have evidence of this happening. I just felt really dirty, and then no one would believe me. Now, you're probably all thinking that after all this, I surely would have left. But I didn't. My family was lacking funds, and I really needed to stay for school expenses without asking them for help. I stayed for 3 months, enduring the harassment for only 3 days, as I'd finally had enough and I decided to be unpleasant to the owner. He stopped giving me gifts 1 month in, and he decided to fire me after 3 months. It was his son who did the talking, saying that I should have smiled more often in the store and that I should have been more pleasant. I wanted so badly to tell the son what happened, but I just couldn't find the words. Though I wasn't the one who quit, I felt relief that I was out. I was free. For those who are wondering, the store is still there, still open, with the same old man and his cursed family. My name is Suri, and I'm 17 years old. I always went with my mom to help her do her grocery shopping, and we usually always went to our local Walmart, and still do to this day. During the beginning of 2020, every place always created some sort of social distancing system to try and reduce the chances of spreading COVID. My local Walmart did this by closing one side of the store's entrance and keeping the other side open. The entrance and exit's automatic doors were separated by cones and police tape. One day, my mom, older brother, and baby brother and I all went together to shop. After I helped my mom with the groceries, she'd let me go off to wander around. She wasn't really worried since I was 14 at the time, and for the most part, I could take care of myself. I had worked for some money, and I wanted to buy some incense sticks, so I went to where they were, grabbed a few that I liked, and I then met up with my mom and brothers. While we were waiting in line to pay for our stuff, my baby brother started to whine and became impatient. My mom then gave my older brother her car keys, and she told him to go wait in the car for us. Also during this time, I had extreme social anxiety, and when my mom's groceries were almost done being scanned, I had started to become nervous. I asked her if she could pay for my stuff for me, but she said no, as she wanted me to learn to talk to people and start being more social. While she was paying, I began to notice the feeling of being watched, as I'm also a really paranoid person. I turned around and I saw a tall white old man that wore worn down worker clothes. This seemed to haven't been washed, as his shirt had many stains on it. He had a mask that was white, and it was also circular with yellow straps, kinda like what painters wear, which I assumed as he also had white paint on his jeans. He had thin gray hair on the sides of his head and slicked hair that was placed over his bald spot. His face was really oily and dirty. I looked away as he gave me a weird smile that made me feel creeped out. My mom then told me that she was going to the car and she'd wait for me there, as my baby brother cried a lot whenever he was away from my mom. I said okay, and I nervously handed my stuff to the cashier. I had accidentally gave her too much money, as my anxiety made me panic. She handed me my receipt, and I started to walk quickly to the doors to leave. Before I could hand my receipt to a Walmart employee to look at it, I heard a voice close behind me then say,
"Oh, don't worry. I saw her pay. She didn't steal anything."
I turned to look up, and it was the same man from before, now behind me. He looked me up and down and then laughed. The old lady with the receipt laughed too, and I awkwardly chuckled. I realized at that moment that he was so quick with paying for his own stuff that he was able to catch up with me. The lady handed back my receipt, and I quickly walked out the doors. I paused and I looked out into the parking lot, as I always have trouble trying to remember where my mom parks her car. Well, as I'm standing there, I hear his voice yet again.
"Hey, you know they're making a social distance for the coronavirus, right?"
I turned to look at him in shock, as I then began thinking to myself why he persisted to follow me so fast and why the hell he wanted to make conversation with me. I didn't know what to do, so I just replied back with, "Yeah, I know," very quietly. I then turned back to the parking lot, and I saw my mom pulling up to the front of the entrance walkway. I walk quickly to her car, and the man follows behind me until he then finally goes into a complete different direction when he saw me going towards my mom. My mom then asked me what the man was telling me, and she told me to tell her before he can run away. I told her he was talking to me about the whole social distancing thing, and nothing bad, but he was following me and really creeping me out. I then looked over to the man who was still in the parking lot, and he was now staring at me while I was explaining to my mom what had happened. And look, I know it's going to sound cliche as hell, but he then entered a white van that had a ladder strapped to the top of it. Nothing else ended up happening, and it was really just a creepy and bizarre encounter at the end of the day, but it really made me hyper aware of my surroundings even more. This happened during August of 2021, and I was 16. This time, however, it was only me and my mom. Whenever it's just the two of us, we tend to go look at the women's clothing section to see if there's any nice clothes. During this particular day, I was lazy and I was dressed in sweats and an oversized t-shirt, and I had a messy bun at the time. I had already found some really nice clothes that I liked. I tried them on and I placed them in our shopping cart. My mom had some clothes that she wanted to try on as well, so I waited for her with our cart. For a little context, the dressing room is like a big cube with white walls, and the middle of it has a walkway where the doors to the rooms are located at. Outside of the walls, there's more clothes hung up. I was waiting on the left side of the wall, and I had rested my arms on the cart while looking down at my phone, going through my Instagram. For my peripheral vision, I saw some shoes walking past me, but I didn't really think too much about it at first, until I noticed them walking past me back and forth a few more times. Being a paranoid person even till now, I knew something was up. I looked to the direction of the person, and I noticed that they seemed to look around my age, or maybe a little older. It was a redhead with glasses. It's gonna sound weird, but I pretended I was taking a selfie, but I'd actually took a photo of him just in case he did anything. I think he had noticed, as he then went to where I couldn't see him anymore. I thought that that was it, and that was the end of it, and I just went back to my phone. I then felt like I was being stared at again literally like a minute later, and I knew it was him. I looked up and he was sort of hiding behind a rack of clothing as if I wasn't going to see him there. Seeing that was a first. It really scared the hell out of me. I grabbed the handle of my shopping cart and I had pulled it to the right side of the dressing room wall to put some distance between us. And as I did so, I heard quick footsteps from behind me. This made me tense as I prepared for the worst, but I had then heard his footsteps stop and slow down as he saw me and then only moved a few feet and not walk away. I then went to the door where my mom was dressing in to ask if she was almost done. She said yes, and while I was in the doorway, I saw him walk past yet again, and he was staring in my direction the entire time. I didn't see him again after that until I was with my mom after she was done, and I was telling her about what happened while we were walking out of the clothing area. And speak of the devil, I then see him again walking towards my direction, now with someone else right beside him. They looked like his older brother, and he was actually shopping, compared to his much creepier sibling. As I walked past him, I had a look of shock, and he gave me the most spine-chilling smile I'd ever seen. I was 16, but it happened during early 2022. I was only with my mom again, and we were walking out of an aisle, and we had accidentally bumped into a tall black man that was trying to enter the one we were exiting. We apologized, and he said to not worry, and we were continuing to turn to the next aisle. As we did so, he then asks,
"How you ladies doing today?"
I turned back to look at him because it sounded as if it was directed towards us. And it was, because he was staring right at me and my mom. "We're doing just fine," I said, kinda confused as to why he would even talk to us like that when our backs were turned away from him, and we didn't even know this guy. I kind of had a gut feeling that he was a major creep, and I was right, as he kept following us for like 3 more aisles. I then spoke to my mom in Spanish, telling her that he keeps following us, and she responded back saying that she noticed too. I was so done and frustrated having to deal with so many creepers before in that same Walmart. I then turned around and just glared at him angrily, and it seemed to work, as we didn't see him again after that. So yeah, that's my 3 stories of my creepy encounters at Walmart. Hopefully I won't have to send in any more. I worked the night shift in a retail store stocking shelves. During the shift, 2 things had happened that left even the manager very baffled. The first is we all heard static over the speaker system. It was like someone had hit the button on their walkie, but all we heard was some sort of demonic sounds in the background. It almost sounded like screaming, but very distant and hellish. It was very off-putting, and it was around midnight when it happened. The second incident happened a few minutes after 3 a.m. My coworker and I were walking back to our areas after lunch, and we heard the sound of someone picking up the phone over the speaker system. The next thing we all hear is the voice of a little girl, then saying, "Hello? Anybody there?" Then the sound of the phone hanging up, and then silence. Our manager didn't even know what was going on, and no one said it was them, nor did anyone laugh. When I returned to my area, I looked at my phone, and I noticed the date. Now, I'm not really a believer of the supernatural, but it was Friday the 13th, and only a few minutes after 3 a.m. So take this with a grain of salt. I never truly believed that it was a weird day before, but I do now. There's been no explanation as to what happened with either of these events. If there was actually a kid stuck in the store that night, I hope they're okay. I was 18 years old and I just moved into my new apartment with my best friend in a totally new city. I grew up in the country my whole life, so living in a city was kind of a strange feeling for me. I had really bad social anxiety, so I'd always avoid going to the grocery store during the day as much as possible. On this night, I decided to head out at around 1:30 a.m. to go get some things that we needed for our place. I drove into an almost empty Walmart. There were maybe about 5 cars in total in the parking lot, so I was pretty happy to avoid any social interaction with anyone. The moment I walked into the store, 2 men took notice of me. They were just standing there watching me as I then grabbed a cart and headed towards the produce section. They were situated next to the women's bathroom. My thought at the time was they must have checked out and they're about to head to their car. I could feel their eyes on me as I shopped, until I saw out of the corner of my eye them leaving the building. I sighed with relief. My biggest fear at the time was that they'd aggressively try to ask me for my number or harass me throughout the store. They just had that vibe to them. I purposely took a little longer than usual shopping for my items. I just wanted to make sure that they were actually long gone before I left the store. I just had a feeling. I checked out, and at this point, I was probably one of the only customers in the store. The moment I exited the store, I had noticed I had a car right next to mine that wasn't there before. It was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme. I knew that because my family had the same car back in the 90s. I then noticed those same 2 men I saw earlier standing next to it and smoking a cigarette. My heart just sank for a moment, and I thought, should I go back inside? Should I ask someone to walk me to my car? What the fuck do I do? I decided that I didn't want to embarrass myself over nothing, so I decided to risk it. Not my smartest idea ever. As I briskly walked back to my truck, I thought that maybe if I smiled at them and act real nice, they won't try anything funny. I walked over to my car, seemingly very confident in myself, and just gave the men a little smile. That's when one of them looked straight at me, and then said,
"It's a quiet night."
I know that he said those words to scare me, so I picked up my pace even more. Right when I thought I was about to be attacked, a lovely customer then left the building. I was so relieved. I ran real fast to my car and locked the door. I swear that I did this in lightning speed. The men had jumped in their car right away too. I drove off as fast as I could, and I realized they had taken off behind me too. All I wanted to do was go home, but I didn't want them to know where I lived. So I just kept driving down really weird roads, all while they followed me. I then had a brilliant thought that I would park my car in the police station's parking lot, and sure enough, they turned down another road. I sat there for a while, called my roommate, and I told her all about what had happened to me. I made sure as I drove home that no cars were following me. The next morning, I was at work when my roommate called me over. She looked completely spooked. She asked if the waitress would retell me what she had just told her. It turns out, the next town over, only 10 minutes away from where I lived, at 3 a.m. in another Walmart parking lot, a girl was attacked and grabbed. From what I was told, she had fought really hard to break free from their grasp while they tried to force her into their car. She had kicked and screamed until someone from the Walmart came out of the store, and the guys then hopped in their car and sped off. I asked the waitress if she remembered anything about what car they drove, and sure enough, it was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme.